So keep this in your head throughout the entire video. The main idea of this video is we need to find the weakness in our body, the weak muscle. Now this is one-sided weakness. So one side of one muscle on one side of your body is weak and the other one is not weak. It might be the opposite of weak. But we tend to focus on the tight muscle, and which one's tight and which one's short and which one's painful. And we can stretch that out all we want, but if we don't address the weak muscle, we're not going to get anywhere. That's what we're trying to go over here. So think throughout the entire presentation, what is the weak muscle, and how is it addressing all these things? Because everything revolves around finding that weak muscle. It's a big cause in a lot of these things. A lot of injuries cause this weakness, or it might just be a weakness that's been through lifestyle has been acquired. All right, so keep that in your head, the weak muscle. So they have a primary injury, could be car accident, whiplash, anything that changed everything else. So when they come to the chiropractor, we adjust this and they should go back to A if everything's imbalanced. So that's in our little chart here. So why do we have pain and how do we fix it? So we have pain from micro or macro injury. Macro injury is like a car accident, something big that's going to knock us off balance. In a perfect world, saying we're perfect. Micro injury is something over time. It could be lifestyle, like you're always doing something with your right hand, so you're strengthening one muscle and weakening another, which can make something look very similar like this. So we have to fix that pattern instead of fixing the bone. The chiropractor can help. But if we keep doing that same thing over and over again, we're going to be back to where we were. All right, so we see the chiropractor, and this is none of you, right? Because it addresses the primary neurological component, we adjust the one bone that's out, fixes everything else, pain resolves, you're good. So you just continue on with your exercises in normal posture. But all of us here, we've seen the chiro, our pain is still there. So that's draws us down to here. So is it a chronic injury or an acute injury? Chronic means it's long-standing, it's been there a long time. We've always had trouble with it. Debbie. Acute injury, it's new. Like let's say we're just in that car accident. So what do? We know what to do there. We rest it, we ice it, we try to protect it with good posture. Like today I had a guy who sprained his SI joint and told him it's sprained. You gotta be careful how you're picking stuff up. You gotta tighten your stomach, squeeze your glutes, because when you're bending down, you're opening up that sprained joint. So you can continue to sprain it more, and that's when you get the pain. And it's never going to heal unless you protect it. So you got to ice it to get rid of the inflammation. You got to heat the muscles that are tight, and it'll heal over time. But you want to heal it to heal in proper alignment too. But still, we're not really hitting us here and why we're here. So we'll continue down our chart to chronic. So we have imbalances that are present. There's something else that's causing us to stay in this pattern. Go to the chiropractor, might fix it for a little bit. We adjust these purple areas, but there's still injury. So what do we see here down here? We got this overstretched muscle, and we got a tight muscle. So that's a unilateral imbalance. One muscle is weak, one muscle is tight. So that brings us back to Newton's law. Well, Newton's law, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if one's tight, the other one has to be weak. They both can be tight, but then it's going to be affecting. That's bilateral. That's the whole other picture. We'll get to that one eventually. But that's most of the stuff we've already talked about, the pelvic tilt. So the whole pelvis is going one way. We'll continue on here with chronic. So what do we do? Is it ligamentous, joint tissue, or is it muscular? Probably both. Let's go to muscular first, because that's why we're here. We're here for exercise. So we gotta stretch the short muscle, which is also the strong muscle. So it's like the seesaw pattern. So you got the fat kid on one end, the skinny tall kid on the other. So it's long. We call that a strain. It's long and overstretched. That's a muscle strain, which is different than a sprain. Sprain we'll get to later. That's ligaments. Debbie?
Yes.
Staring off into the... So third law again, right?
It
happens to one affects the other. Grab that ball. Somebody move here to the middle.
Yeah, I have to go.
Okay, thank you.
And you've heard me use the word synergy before. Say hi to the dog. So muscle synergy is the same thing as Newton's law. I'm flexing my bicep, my biceps, if I work that all the time, my triceps going to get weaker and weaker as my biceps get stronger and stronger. So that's muscle synergy, or a lack of synergy, you could say. So that's what we're doing here, is we're trying to balance that out. And we can see that the lifestyle too, daily activities could affect that. So if you're not applying what we're doing here to your life, you can run into the same troubles with the chronic pain. So let's jump back up to our branch here. We're going over to the ligamentous joint issue, because joints are technically very like ligaments. They're ligamentous structures. They don't have a lot of blood flow, and they support the joints. Discs are in that category too. So I have two different brackets. Can you see those from there?
Okay.
So we got sprain, right? So that's different. So let's say we've sprained a joint. So zoom in on this little guy here. These are two different vertebral segments of your spine. So you and your L4, your L5, you could say that's those. So here in the red, these are all red, are fixated, they're stuck. So that's ligament's been shortened. There's lack of motion. So we would call that, hypomobility. There's not enough motion there. But in that same two joints, over here in green, we have the sprained joint. So that's overstretched, it's elongated, it's hypermobile, there's too much motion. So what happens when we adjust a hypermobile segment? Chiropractic-wise, usually feels worse, because you're increasing motion where there's already increased motion. So that's why we adjust the purple areas, because they're fixated. Now some of us have different areas all throughout their spine. Some are fixed, some are not, some are hypermobile. You could have this be fixed and this be hypermobile. See how that's stretched there? So this joint's being overstretched, and this one's fixated. What does that tell us? So that can affect the disc too. So there's a disc in between the joints. That's in the front of the spine. So one side of that, you can get a little spurs, those little bony spurs on the x-ray. What were those spurs at one time?
Not there.
Ligaments. Those are ligaments.
Oh, really?
Ligaments or spurs?
Ah.
Ligaments or spurs.
Is that the same thing like you get bone spurs on your foot?
Yeah, so let's follow this down. So degenerative is a... Okay, so we lost some video here, but the main thing was that on the degenerative line on the right there in red leads to shortening and arthritis. So those are the spurs that we'll see. So that hardening and that calcium buildup actually happens in ligaments and joints, and it's really not that it's, you see them, they look like they're sticking out in space on an x-ray, and it's actually that was once a ligament there. So there was a structure there before, you just can't see it, it's loosened on x-ray. Nerves.
We ran out of time.
It stopped.
Let's see.
It's going again. It's going again.
So correction is to mobilize the joint. So that's not just chiropractic, that's you. You have to mobilize the joint through motion and exercise. So we're not just talking about muscular stuff here, we're talking about ligament stuff now. So this is your stretching. You stretch to mobilize the joint. So you can stretch ligaments too, like what we're doing with our necks. Like say this is tight, we're stretching it. We've got to be careful not to stretch a hypermobile, the green segment here, because that's the sprain. So let's say they got whiplash from the side. So I got hit this way. These guys are jamming up, these guys are sprained. And we can have that front to back, but we're not thinking that way yet. We're only in one plane. We're sticking 2D, so we don't confuse people.
So work this side, leave this side alone.
Yeah, so that's why we're always checking the shoulder height and everything like that and see where the muscles are tight. Because a lot of times the muscles will tighten up to protect the joints. And if you're very hypermobile, what's the problem with the muscles? If you're hypermobile in the joint, the muscles are probably
Overstretched.
weak. Yes, correct.
Wait, back up. So if this
Backing up.
shoulder's high, that means these are
Not
probably
necessarily.
stressed. So work
You
this side.
can say that for sure, no.
This is what you do, because you get it figured out and you don't.
But if we pan over to Debbie, what's she doing on the ball?
I'm slunching
That
over.
She's all slunched over.
I am so slunched over. I'm
And she
losing
doesn't
air in
even
my
care. Look at you, perfect. Keep
She
doing
is.
circles.
ball. You're so perfect.
I'm trying.
I can't.
So a
'cause then it
sprain of the
moves.
joint is a lengthening of that joint.
She said she can't move because then it moves.
So if it's lengthened, it's unstable. So the correction of that is to balance the muscle, what I just said. So the muscle's probably weak, or it could just be weak on one side. It is losing air.
I know, and I feel like I'm gonna fall off of it. That's why I'm slunging.
No losing.
I think you got like a slow leak.
I think I do. It used to be tall.
So if we correct all these unilateral issues, it's going to lead us to one point. Lifestyles and activities, if we still have pain, something we're doing in our daily activities is causing this trouble. Or it could be a bilateral imbalance, which is our pelvic tilt and everything. But first, the best first step is this. We got to get this lined up. So this is chiropractic.
Well, that's your job, isn't it?
This is my job, but it's also your job. Because I can get rid of this primary stuff, but if these other guys are still out of place, and we still have those muscles that are imbalanced, it's going to return to where it was. Now, it all depends on how long it's been like this. So if that muscle's been overstretched for 10, 20 years, you're going to have effects on the ligaments too.
But what if we've gone
So
to
people say like, oh, I don't have arthritis, the doctor checked it. It takes 10 years to even show up on an x-ray. We all have some sort of degeneration now. Nothing may not show up on an x-ray. It just takes many years for it to be there. So I'll check people's feet. I'm like, that's the beginning of arthritis. I can feel it. And they'll say, is that arthritis? And I can't say for sure because I know they can go get an x-ray and be like, oh, I don't have arthritis. Nate's an idiot. It doesn't happen overnight, people. This takes forever. So these work hand in hand. And it doesn't have to be this way. You could sprain both sides. But what we go back to the third law, what happens to one thing happens to the other thing. So if we sprain both, then something else is fixated. Probably the front of the joint. So there was a topic here on genetics that we got stuck on, and I removed it from the video just because the major take-home message is here. Just because like your mother has arthritis in her foot doesn't mean that you have to have arthritis in your foot. We all have our tendencies as far as structure, but we can still fight against them. And you know, like I said before, it's no fate but what we make. So we can definitely take those weaknesses we may have inherited and try to make them our major areas of focus, turn them into our strengths. And that's what you really want to focus on anytime you're doing exercise. Find out what your weak areas are and strengthen them. So what we're going to do today is we're going to try to evaluate some of these things to help us figure out what's causing these things. What's causing us to be like this?
That is wonderful.
So how do we fix that?
That's what we need to know.
And the good point here is the longer these issues remain, the more imbalanced the muscles become. So you could be like this and not have any pain.
Is that right?
You could be like that and not have any pain at all.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you, are the purple ones pain?
Likely pain, because that's where they look like they get jammed up, but they can be jammed up and you can not have any pain. Oh, so we're going to look at unilateral stuff today. And what are the best ways to do that? Find out what your balances are, what your tight muscles are, what your weak muscles are.
Well, I know when we roll on that roller, whatever's hurting.
Good.
Stand
And
on
Well, not always pain is a good idea, but think beyond the foam roller, but combine it with what we do after foam rolling.
Stand on one
Think
leg.
Newton's law. So if we think a muscle's tight, the muscle that works opposite is going to be what? Weak. So we can try comparing exercise both sides and see what we find there. So let's start with our outer thighs and inner thighs, because those are synergists, right? So what one does, the other one is the opposite of. And if one's affected, the other one has to be affected inversely. So if we got a short muscle on our outer thigh, that means our inner thigh is going to be weak.
You know, what if both of them hurt? Then you're in the weeds.
Well, they-
Seriously, they do. They both
What
hurt.
did I just say? Pain doesn't matter, because they both can hurt.
Yeah.
Pain doesn't mean it's short. Right?
Figure it out.
Both these guys hurt.
Okay, so how do you
Right?
figure it out?
Fixated hurts, and the sprained one hurts.
Right. So how do you figure it out?
The weak muscle. We gotta find the weak muscle.
Right. And that's what I'm trying to figure out where.
So what do we do to find a weak muscle?
What do we do to find that?
I thought it was opposite, but that's what I'm saying.
you're focusing on the hurting too much. Weakness. How do you find that weak muscle? You exercise it,
Oh,
and you compare it to the other leg.
Oh, oh.
you exercise it and you compare it,
Yeah.
right?
So how are we gonna work the inner thigh?
We're gonna exercise
We've
it.
all done that exercise before. There's lots of exercises before it, but what about the one where we lay on our sides and lift it up? So everyone do that. Start on your left. See how it feels.
Start laying on your left, or
I wasn't.
Laying on your left.
and then you're gonna raise the left leg.
I was
too.
Still filming?
just
No.
being able to feel it.
I don't know if you keep that. So I was just gonna type this in overhead, but I found this baby mouse in my house, and it won't like get out of my hand. I have to sit here and keep petting it, so I can't type. So I'm just gonna talk through this. So what you want to do is find the weak muscle and strengthen it. And what you'll find is that there's going to be a tight muscle that counteracts that weak muscle. This is the take-home message. So both sides could be tight, and that could be a bilateral issue. You could have it on both legs. And that it's not that that doesn't need to be stretched, but you need to find the weak muscle. Because you can stretch and you can try to lengthen that tight muscle all day long, but if we don't address the weak muscle, the muscle we're not using, the muscle that's not getting enough neurological input, we're never going to solve the problem. So find the weak muscle, strengthen it. Take home message, take it home and do it. Thanks, guys.